You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
It's now April of 2023, and I've been starting these Filmmakers Lounge. I think I've settled on that name for this kind of hangout. You guys don't really know each other. I'm assuming. I guess I didn't ask on this one. You guys have never met.
Nope. Nice to meet you, Sheridan.
Hi, nice to meet you.
There you go. So now you're best friends. That's the idea.
See, fist bump. You guys can't see it, but you can hear.
Yeah.
You can hear.
Yeah. So to icebreaker, I like to start these off just by asking, what are you watching? Anything you're consuming. Let me ask that. Maybe it's a podcast other than this. Maybe it's a TV show, a video game. Like what are you into right now?
Wow. Do I ever have time to watch anything? That's always the trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff, I end up watching a lot more series than I do movies these days because in addition to the work, I got 3 kids. So I just don't have time. So maybe I can squeeze in an hour. Right.
Right. Yeah.
All right, honey, get next to me here in bed and let's snuggle up and let's watch, I don't know, Shadow and Bone is what we're on. We've been watching, just a lot of mostly Netflix. We also like a lot of the Disney series stuff. And then we try to find some weird stuff in there.
Weird stuff?
Yeah.
I like weird stuff. What's weird stuff?
Well, again, Shadow and Bone is kind of interesting because it's very fantasy, but it's the mythology is not. So I don't know. We're just always looking for something that's probably different than the last thing we watched.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Because you don't want to repeat because, again, you've only got so many hours to consume anything. So you're like, I've never seen this before. Boring. Yeah. Get it out of here.
And, you reach a point where you don't like anything anymore anyway. So,
Oh, boy. Uh-oh.
It's just after time, you're like, okay, I do this. I watch people make these things. You don't look at it the same anymore, right? All you see is the seams. And so I think there's certainly I find there's certainly a remove. So I don't watch stuff the way I used to, because I used to watch, I'd watch 3-4 movies in a day. When I was in film school, I was watching, something from every decade, constantly. So there's literally hundreds of thousands of movies that you've seen. And now it's I'm going to go play baseball with the kid.
Right. Yeah.
See, I guess, it is. It's funny how life and stuff is different because I do have a lot of friends who have kids and have wives and all these kind of things. And it's weird, too, because I'm early 20s. But, a lot of people start stuff right after college. Yeah. So for me, still being by myself in my apartment, if I'm not working, I have way too much time to watch TV sometimes. The latest thing I'm watching is Dead to Me with Linda Cardellini and Christina Applegate. My friend told me about it. He was like, you love dark comedy. You love dark humor. You got to watch this. And so far, it is amazing. Yeah. I have this bad habit, I like to watch stuff when it's done instead of waiting every single season sometimes. Not everything, but a lot of stuff because I get impatient, which again is not the greatest trait, but that happens sometimes. So now that Dead to Me is done, I'm binging the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I sometimes go on these childhood trips, just, if you're feeling sad and you want to dive into something nostalgic. I do that a lot. So I recently randomly watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers just nice. Because I'm not gonna lie, I did, and I was like, okay, this is very 90s, but I was like, I love that there's a diverse cast. I love that I know the heroes are gonna win all the time. I was like, I see why I liked this as a kid. So that was kind of a thing that I did recently. What else did I watch? I saw RRR, which was amazing. It was so good, and I've told 10 of my friends to go watch it. I was like, you have 1 month to watch this so we can talk about it.
We're not friends anymore.
Yeah. So those, I think those are the main things that I've been looking at so far.
It's so nice to be young still and not totally cynical yet. Don't worry, it's coming. It'll come.
Yeah,
It'll come.
Yeah, I've been told 30s, they're like, good luck. was like, that's when your mindset kind of changes for the better and for the worse, is what people tell me. It's like you start to care less about what other people think of you and all this other kind of stuff. But it's also like you're really setting into like, I'm in my 30s. Like 3-0 happened. It's like I'm been an adult for a while now. And it's like, it's time to get serious if you're not too serious. That's what everybody tells me. But I mean,
it's what I taught college for a while. And it's what I always loved about working with students, is that they reminded me of like, oh yeah, that's why the fuck I got into this. Like, you see that the love of it, and they see like, oh, I can do that with a lens. I can swap a lens, and it changes the story, and you see the light bulbs go off, and that's why. And it's like, because again, after you spend 15, 20 years working, and you got all these grumpy ass grips, and people just they're just they're biding their time so that they can get into double and triple OT and that sort of stuff. You start to get more and more cynical, but then you start working with young filmmakers, and for me, it's always been like this really refreshing thing. So I love like hearing from young voices and hearing from young filmmakers, because it reminds me of like, oh yeah, that's right. That's why I enjoy doing this. So.
Did you see the trailer for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie that's coming out with some of the OG casts, like from the first iteration of it?
Oh yes, I did.
I out of nowhere, I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, well, no, I paid attention because at the time when I was watching it, because you get your recommendations and stuff, and it was weird getting recommended children's toys and different things. I was like, I got to stop watching this. But one thing that did pop up was the trailer, and I was like, oh, okay, 30 years is coming up, cool. So I watched it, and I was like, I wasn't even like officially born. I wasn't old enough to watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But again, like my mom and my family was like, oh, gee, we're going to start you here.
Yeah.
So it's like, for some reason, I felt it. I was like, I wasn't around at the time, but it's like, it's still a part of me. Like, I'm super excited about this.
You got
for
nostalgia for something that you didn't really experience when it came. That's interesting.
Yeah. So
but it was always there though. Like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they were constantly reinventing themselves, right? So it's been around for so long. I think Pokemon is kind of the same way. It's like, it's had this constant, and to a degree, Star Wars, right? My kid loves Star Wars movies, just not the same ones that I do.
Yeah, right. That's how I feel with nostalgia. I feel like, because at first I associated nostalgia with, okay, this came out in the 80s. If you weren't born in the 80s, you don't get it. So it's not, you can't be nostalgic for it. But to me now, it's starting to feel like nostalgia comes from whatever you watched as a kid is what you're going to feel as an adult. I feel like it's less about if you were born in the time period than if you watched it during your formative years. Like, it's starting to feel more like that. So I think that's why it hit me. So like, there are some people that are like almost 10 years older than me, and I'm feeling the same way they're feeling, but it's because they watched it as a kid, but then so did I. So I think, to me, like, why I like film so much is because of that legacy. Like, there's so many things, no matter what age, if you saw something that someone else did, and you might be in different decades, there's still that bond and that conversation that you're going to have with people. And knowing that something you make can be impactful and last for so long, even after you're gone. I think that, to me, that's one of the reasons why I like it. It's like you want to keep telling stories because they live after you do.
No, that's pretty deep. That's pretty good.
All right, I'm going home.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I mean, I think that's honestly, I think you're speaking to like, it's one of the first things humans did, right? Was they told stories, right? And so it speaks to, people always talk about, we got your needs, you got your shelter, you got your water, you got to have food and that sort of stuff. But I think, creativity, expression is also a need. We innately have to do this as human beings. And I think the idea that what we say can echo beyond our years, beyond our lifetimes, I think that is a true, like, internal need that every human being has, that they feel like they can carry on through their voice beyond that.
Yeah. And it's got me thinking, my son's about to turn 19, and I've tried to, as he was growing up, I tried not to do that parent thing of like, everything new is garbage. Just look at, I would see some of my friends do this too. Like, I just show my kids stuff from the 80s that I grew up on. I'm like, okay, cool. But like, we're living in modern times. They have to like look at their own stuff and listen to their own music, their own, even if it does suck, whatever. I'm not going to, stop, they got to blend it. So we would watch stuff and like, oh wait, here's the Goonies, like, here's the stuff I like, but let's watch something modern too. That's totally fine. And like, and I don't know if that's made him more well-rounded or if he's just a weird kid now. He's definitely a weird kid because he grew up in this household.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You have succeeded.
Yeah. He's out in the world now. It's terrifying. But yeah, it's just got me thinking about that. Like I wonder what he's starting to get that nostalgic for. Maybe a few more years. But what's going to hit him? Because it's going to be a weird mix of stuff. Like, oh, the Goonies and like Miley Cyrus or something. I have no idea. Like, it could be anything. It's going to be interesting.
Fun fact, The Goonies was the first movie I ever saw. So
I'm so
serious.
Wow.
That was my first movie. So my babysitter till this day is like, I can't even watch The Goonies because you made me watch it so much when you were a kid. So she showed it to me and I was like, what? Kids are in a movie? I was like,
my posters. There was a Goonies poster. We took everything out because we're moving, but there's Goonies posters in here, and it is legit my favorite movie. I watched it a million times as a kid, and it still stands up. It doesn't. It's a bunch of kids screaming for 2 hours. I get it, but I still love it. It doesn't matter.
It's so funny because I have, like, with our kids, we've actually kind of gone a little the other direction where we've so much of the stuff we were like, well, do we really need them to watch? So he finally saw, he's 8. He finally saw Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time.
Nice.
Because I keep, every time he's out on the playground, I keep doing the music. He's like, well, what the fuck are you doing, Dad? And yeah, he literally says, what the fuck
Dad, I don't get the reference.
And so I was like, all right, Squidiana, So finally we've started to show him. But I mean, so much of it was like, some of the stuff our parents let us watch. I mean, like Gremlins. My parents let me watch Gremlins. That shit's like...
Yeah, I saw it in the theater, and apparently I don't remember seeing it in the theater. But my dad, that was 83, I think. Yeah, I would have been 4. My dad took that to me, and my mom almost killed him because I didn't sleep in my bed for like a month. Yeah, I don't remember this because I was 4 in the theater watching Gremlins.
The same thing. Like I remember going to see Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that melting stuff. And even though today we look at the effects of it and we're like, okay, whatever as far as the effects go, that was cutting edge, and it's still pretty. It's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, it's still pretty good.
Yeah. So it was fun to watch the movie, but my wife was like, "Am I going to let him watch that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to let him watch it. I am going to torture the child. I'm going to give him serious issues for the rest of his life, just like we had. Like, why should we cheat him?
Put toothpicks in his eyes, like Clockwork Orange. She's like,
Alex, actually, that's next week's choice.
Oh my god,
that's a severe upgrade. That's good. I like it. I actually do want to go back to, you talked about getting cynical and everything, and more so not watching content, TV shows, movies, whatever, in the same light. I'm getting my master's right now, and I did this during undergrad too, watching movies differently and just starting to write scripts and read scripts and starting to see the seams or whatever. And then master's degree I think I've gotten to the point where I watch. I don't know. Like I watch movies in the way of like really breaking everything down into little bits and like, why is this working? Like, I don't really even care if I like the movie or not. Like I have to watch this movie over and over and really just dissect it like a cadaver, I guess. What point are you at in, cause you're a filmmaker and everything. So you're having to do this maybe early stages. Do you watch movies and TV shows a little differently?
I do. I think too, because I've been on set. Like as soon as I graduated from college, my mom was like, all right, 6 months. But because of COVID, because my senior year was during COVID, so she was like, all right, I guess I'll give you some extra time. And I had enough of being in the house. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go figure this out. So I stayed with a friend for a little bit while I was getting some Atlanta work. So being on set made me more so pay attention to things. And so now when I watch movies because of that experience, I'm like, oh, that's definitely a stage. That's not, they're not outside for real. Or it's like now that my friends know, they want me to explain stuff to them. Mm-hmm. So it's like it kind of keeps it fresh on the brain as far as the technical things. But then sometimes I don't like it because it's like I'm taking myself out of the experience now because I'm too far into, okay, I know this isn't real because of this, and this, or, oh, I know that's a stunt double, or, oh, I know that's whatever. So like that part of me is like, man, like, to be a kid again and to just watch movies to watch them and not dissect them. So I think that's again why I go back and watch a lot of like childhood stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, that part of my brain now, it's kind of messed up to where I can't really think about it like I did as a kid to just watch the movie just to watch it. It messes me up a little bit.
Your teachers, your instructors didn't do a good job unless they ruined movies for you. Like that was always my goal in teaching. I'm like, all right, guys, I'm here to ruin movies for you. If you like movies, you should get the fuck out of my class because you won't like them anymore. So, but no, you'll still like them. Just you look at it very differently. I always I would provide assignments about bringing in scenes, and someone brought in this opening scene from Daredevil, the Netflix TV series. Excellent. We're so good, such a well made. But it's that hallway scene, right? And they're like, "Yeah, it's all one shot." I was like, "Oh, ho, ho." And so we watched the scene, and we spent probably 2 hours watching the scene over and over and over. And I'm like, "You tell me when it's a new shot." And just forcing them to identify all of the invisible cuts, all the places. And do we necessarily get all of them? Probably not, because we're not on set, right? We don't necessarily know how many takes. We don't know, right? We don't know all the nuances. But you can get pretty close to figuring out how it's actually done and how it's put together. And it's just, that whole series is just a fantastic. Yeah, it's just, the lighting, the cinematography. It's just such a well-made kind of construct. But again, totally ruined for everybody now. They can't watch the fight scene. All they can see is like, oh yeah, she was a stunt double. Oh yeah, I see where they wiped the camera. It's ruined.
I know I made it sound negative, but I guess the positive is, because if you do want to go into making films, it does, now you know how to approach things differently. Or it's like when I make something, because I'm still learning. So as I make something and I go to people for feedback and they explain something to me like, you need to fix this, tighten this up. It's like, okay, there's too many pauses, cut it down. Now, at least, again, like I have that understanding because of watching movies and dissecting them, talking to people. So now I can kind of apply that to my own stuff. So, of course, there's a pro. I did make it sound like it's like the worst thing in the world. But I think that is helpful to kind of have that experience and have teachers that are there to help you and guide you to kind of help you better understand the films that you do love and why you love them and why they are the way that they are or why they won the awards that they did or whatever. It's like it is a helpful tool to be able to do that breakdown. So pros and cons.
No, yeah, it's definitely keeping a kernel, I think, of that childhood glee inside of you somewhere. You have to have it. You have to have that little smoldering thing somewhere to be able to create anything. Otherwise, you're talking about the grumpy grips and stuff. It's like clock out or whatever. Like you want to be there and just see the magic of cinema. It is still, you have to come back around maybe a little bit and like, okay, I understand how everything works and all the magic maybe is not necessarily gone. I just have to redirect it and be like, oh, it's magical because I know how it works. And it is kind of like a magic trick, like all the time. That's kind of cool, right? Right, everybody? Yeah.
And nothing against my grips, by the way. Like, I love my grips, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, but it's not just that.
But it's grumpy, too. I mean, geez.
Yeah, right? They're totally shit on all the time, right? Lack of preparation on this person's behalf. Now Mr. Grip fixed my lack of preparation for me, So that's, there's a huge part of that. So, I think it's, keeping that magic alive inside is really important, especially when you're writing, right? Because you're writing and you have to be able to write with a certain amount of abandon. Because if you're not feeling it when you write it, they're not going to feel it when they read it, and they're not going to feel it when they see it. You have to feel it when you write it. If it's not in your soul, in your mind, if you're not crying when you're writing that scene, they're not going to cry when they see it. It's just not going to happen. And I think the only way to maintain that is if you can still always connect to that that core that sparked you from the beginning.
Yeah, I get around that by just crying just all the time. Yeah, I just don't stop. Like,
it is 23, so
yeah. Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, or even like we watched in my class last night, going along with your film actually. Like we watched Joker, which not everybody liked, but just recognizing on a deeper level what worked about it and talking about mental health, and did it approach it in a new way? And I feel like that's the only thing you can do with any film, any process of just like, am I telling the truth about this kind of thing? So maybe that's a nice segue into your film, just subjects in general, about approaching a subject. Like how did you approach your film, knowing that mental health is obviously a huge issue, could be very broad, to try and narrow it down to a fine point.
Well, this originally started. It's me and a co-writer, so Jack Lame. Hi, Jack. Whenever you watch this, hello. But he and we were working on Black Panther 2 together as PAs, and I don't know why, like randomly, I like to talk about mental health in general, just like ask people, you know what, how are you doing? Like when people get mad on set, I think it's the COVID PA me as well, when people will like yell at me or be really rude, I'm like, how are you feeling today? So that kind of was a conversation that started, and we got to know each other better. So I found out he's a military vet who actually has a mental illness. He has borderline personality disorder, which is basically, you know, his moods can go from like 0 to 100 depending on what's going on, how he's feeling, if he's not really prepared to attack something or whatever. And of course, being a military vet, having that background and that trauma, that's a thing as well. So when we started that discussion, my senior year, I worked as a mental health tech in a mental health hospital. So doing that during COVID, all of that, it was a lot going on for us and for the patients. So that, I think, is what connected the two of us. And then we were like, oh, having that perspective of, you know, he was also a patient in a mental health hospital. We weren't at the same hospital. We always have to clarify that. I was like, we were not worker and patient. It was not the same thing. Right. So he was in a hospital, different time. But those two perspectives, having that conversation of like, oh, you thought of this thing this way, and I actually thought of it this way, as you know, and this kind of conversation happened, and we started talking about mental health as a whole, and then like mental health for people of color, and how like a lot of people don't want to talk about it because they don't think they're supposed to talk about it. And so as young people, we were like, we need to express this somehow. We're like, hey, you want to make films, I want to make films, let's be friends and make a film together. So that's kind of how the script came about, and just kind of really digging deep into these characters, because you know, both of our characters, we have a male and a female. And they're both dealing with a different mental illness. And, you know, they're also in different stages of their mental health journey, which again is also important, because there are some people who have services and have that experience, and there are some people who don't, and who are just now experiencing, because, you know, a lot of times statistically, you start to experience, if you're having a mental illness, you're starting to experience those things in like your late teens to early 20s. So, you know, as a little kid, there might be some signs, but it really hits during, of course, that big transitional period of your life. So again, just that balance in character. So hopefully giving different perspectives to people, and, you know, talking about in general too. I, being a tech and being someone who cares about mental health, I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of people laugh at that, or, you know, there's always, you know, somebody homeless on the street who's talking to themselves, or something is going on, and people are like, aha, that's so funny. Or I see them videotaping, and it's like, that was another thing that made me want to make this, because it's like the fact that somebody's struggling and we think it's funny, and it's not funny. I didn't like that. So just these different signs have been coming up, and it's like, yeah, we need to tell the story as best as we can, because you're right, mental health is a huge topic. You can't talk about everything, but talk about what you can, and talk about what you are passionate about or what you have knowledge in. So as a young filmmaker, that was always advice given to me. It's like, write what you know. That's where you need to start, and that's what we're trying to do. So just about these two characters who are struggling with their mental health in public spaces, and having to figure out how to deal with that, and also showing what it's like when other people are looking at you when you're struggling.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's got me thinking, just what we think growing up as kids, whenever what we think is just normal, quote unquote. And you experience people that were struggling over your formative years, or as a kid or whatever. And you just thought, like, what's wrong with that person? Especially someone who grew up in the 80s and everything, and where people just really didn't know, oh, that person's funny, or, you know, or weird or whatever, and not really going into, like, it would be like these days, like, oh, they're going through this, that, and the other. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes you reevaluate your life a little bit, just
yeah,
like those kind of people. That's really interesting.
It's a big, right? It's big. It's a big thing. It's thematically, right? It's this big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. I haven't seen the film. So how did you, how did you find the connective tissue to make it specific, to make it, how did you get it from theme to story? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So another big thing for me is when you're talking about big topics that, you know, people go to school for and have degrees in. Well, that was a big thing. We reached out to 3 mental health professionals, and, you know, we sent them the script, and of course they looked at it and they're like, okay, you got to fix this. This isn't right. This isn't blah, blah, blah.
Nice, yeah.
So having those people there actually really helped us like form the story and formed where to go. Because having the conversation of, okay, what's something that is tricky in mental health right now? Or, you know, what's this thing that you don't see explored a lot in media? Because those kind of people are the ones who will watch films and be like, this is not how it should be. This is not the best representation. So especially being new, I was like, I know that some of this stuff is over my head. So I need to talk to people that are really in that field. So that really did kind of help us kind of narrow down like what we should do with our story, or even like, what perspectives we're taking in certain moments, and like what things to focus on. What are these kind of triggers, or what kind of stuff is going to have these characters, if they're having a state of a flashback, or if they're having some emotional, reaction to something. Those consultants really, really helped us be there. So Dr. Wheeler, Miss J, and Miss Dayblow, thank you guys so much, because I'm going to tell them to watch this. So now they've heard their names on the podcast. So there you go. But two, we're still in the script stages. we're still
the best kind of famous.
We're still in, as of now, right now we're in the pre-production stages and like getting funding and stuff for it. So, we haven't been able to film it yet. But I think I'm excited to, because of the preparation that we've put in. And, my co-creator is also going to direct it, because he was like, I have a special perspective, so I think I want to try to direct this. And I was like, it's not a bad idea. So I think it'll be fun, just for all of us to, of course, hopefully have a good time, not get too dark on set, but know that we're doing something that we think is important, and hopefully other people see it the same way.
Yeah. Man, doing the research for something like that. I wrote a medical procedural that I had to do more research I've ever done in my entire life. I mean, way above my pay grade. Like mentally, I was like, I don't understand any of this shit. I'm way too stupid for this. But luckily, I had people that could help, and they gave me a lot of books and stuff.
Hooray for smart people! Hooray for smart people!
Yeah. Oh my God. And luckily, I think with shows and stuff, especially medical, I think there's a lot of yada yada, I guess you could say, where you just have to make sure that they sound like they know, the doctors or whoever know what they're saying. They're being confident. In other words, they're like, blah blah blah. Maybe it's not 100% correct, but as long as the doctors on TV sound like they are confident, oh, they need this or that and the other, whatever, like the audience is going to go, yeah, they do need that. But I imagine actually for mental health, it's probably more important, where you're like, well, we really got to get this right, because this has a chance of maybe upsetting some people.
Yeah, I think that was a thing that was hard for me, because I'm kind of a perfectionist, something I'm working on. But I get nervous because it's so important. It's like, okay, this person might not agree with this, or this person might not agree with this. And one of the consultants was like, just attack it honestly, as best as you can, because it is a lot. There's no way that in this 15 to 20 minute short film that you're going to cover everything, because now we're even thinking about expanding it into like a mini series or something, because it's just too much to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's just the thought process. So we'll see how
okay.
things go.
That's an exclusive.
If the short film can get funded and if it can go well, that's what we want. We want to aim for
on your
it.
scoop.
Yeah.
Congrats on your scoop, man.
Got it.
But,
move over, NPR.
Yeah, I don't know. We just I'm doing better about thinking like I can't. Some people are going to be upset, but hopefully that
somebody undoubtedly will be upset.
Some of that aggravation hopefully brings up conversation. So that's kind of our goal with it. It's like, okay, if you're mad about it, tell me why. Why do you think things didn't go this way or this way? And then if they say a certain thing, it's like, actually go do your research, because blah, blah, blah. Or, things like that. Because everybody knows on social media, there's things that are like awful, or things that people don't like, that gets just as much traction and just as much conversation going as things that people do like. So it's like, hopefully for us, having that be more of a positive approach to that, and not trying to actually be, toxic or mean or anything with this. It's just, if you're angry or you're confused about something, we want you to hopefully research afterwards, or we want you to hopefully, follow us and help, go through us as we talk about it and all of these other things. So yeah, I've settled on the fact now that I have to be okay with knowing I'm not going to make everybody happy, because it's impossible.
No,
you can't do it. So yeah, we're just going to do it the best that we can. And, with one of our characters loosely being based off a person I know, that kind of helps. That's his perspective. And you can't tell him what is his perspective, because, that's part of him. And then, with the other character as well, representing things as best we can from the research that we've done. So,
nice.
Yeah. You have to get out there. You can't worry about you can't worry about whether or not someone's going to like, or whether this person or that person's going to like. You know what? You have to get your voice out there, and not everybody's going to like your singing. And, and that's okay. Right. Because someone else, it could, particularly when you're dealing with this kind of topic, it's the kind of thing where someone else, it could save their life, and it could be the thing that that actually helps them in a way that, and if you can reach that one person, you got 10 other people over here like, bleh. If you can help, if you get the one person that it matters to, fuck them.
They say write or, create something for you, and then you'll find your audience afterwards. It's like, don't do it the other way around. So I'm learning. Yeah.
Dan, how do you approach research on your writing projects?
I'm a little OCD, right? So I'm pretty extensive on it. Typically, the way I approach generally is I find the story that I want to tell, the character that I want to tell, and then I kind of build out whatever research there is. And so, I end up with a lot of research projects because I've written a lot of historical dramas and stuff like that. So I end up with doing just an enormous amount, and I just end up with stacks of books that I'm reading and pretend that that's writing. It's the trick, and it's this fine balancing act as a writer, right? Because it's like, at what point is it actually helping your writing, and at what point is it just fucking procrastinating, right? At which point are you like, I'm just gonna read some more pages and see what inspiration comes, nothing. But I think, and a lot of the writing I've done, of course, is also under contract, which means you got a deadline, right? You got someone who's banging on your door like, yo, where's my script? Give me my money back, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that, that certainly pushes you along. At the same time, you can't let perfect be in the way of getting it done, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to get it done. And so, and it's a draft, right? And you can always write another draft, and you can always write another draft, and inevitably you will write another draft. Yeah. And odds are you'll end up somewhere around 15 to 20 drafts before it's any good anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think, the constant, but I do tend to approach a lot of research. Most of my research tends to be reading. I'm a reader, but there are times where you go out to experts. I was working on one that's about shag dancing, and I'm not a very skilled dancer, to put it mildly. I like to shake it, but other people generally ask me not to. And but because it was around shag dancing, so I went out and I took shag dancing lessons like crazy. I still cannot shag dance worth a crap. Do not ask me to shag dance.
Okay, I gotta stop. What the hell is shag dancing?
Okay, you're from the South, right, Chuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
you don't know
and
what
there's specific classes for this somewhere?
Yeah. So shag dance is actually the state dance of both North Carolina and South Carolina. It's basically a slowed down kind of jitterbug is what it is. It became popularized in the 1950s. It really kind of started in the 1940s. So it started on like these, the Chitlin circuit, right? So on these black clubs where the musicians would come around, and then the white kids started going to these black clubs and learning the dance. This particularly happened around North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That's kind of where they, just the legend, the legend happens. This is maybe the beginning of the STD period, right? Mm-hmm. But they, so the white kids started going to these black nightclubs to learn to dance, and from there it kind of escalated quickly, right? This is South Carolina, wasn't necessarily popular with the authorities. So that's a lot of where the story is based around.
Interesting.
And, so it's kind of this idea, and as a middle-aged white dude, right, I have to be cognizant that I'm telling a story that's about appropriation. Right. It's a story about white people taking something from a culture and adapting it, adopting it, and now you can go to like these shag. Are you familiar with shag dancing at all?
This is the first I've heard of it, but I'm interested. Keep going.
Like when you get into like some serious shag dancing, like when people doing some really cool shit, it's really cool dancing. But there's it's pretty simple steps for most people, but
look at
it became start looking it up. But now if you go to like a shag club, it's mostly these older white people, and I mean older than I am, right? So like older, right? And again, it was from the 50s, and it was just this huge sensation that swept all across the South, and with that, you kind of have to pay attention to how do you tell this story respectfully in a way. So that's one example. So by going to, I took a lot of trips out to the beaches. It was a good reason to go to the beach, right?
Yeah.
Well, it took a lot of trips. I went and did a lot of interviews with people that were in the scene while they were still with us. Some of them are no longer with us, cool. But a lot of them now are in their 70s and 80s, and they still want to tell stories. And then I did a lot of research, just kind of going to so I went to local newspaper archives. So I'd go to libraries around the North Myrtle Beach area and out of Columbia, South Carolina, and go to archives and pull up, microfiche newspapers. They still have that out there. It's pretty cool. And you can kind of look at a lot of these old newspaper stories. So you just, you find your research however you can. And the trick with it is what's actually relevant to the story and being able to filter that, because there's so much.
Right.
There's so much research on any given topic.
Yeah.
And finding the stuff that actually feeds the kernels of your story, and knowing this is the soul of my story. This is where it's got to go, so that you can filter out okay, I don't need any of this stuff about how Hurricane Hazel wiped out, the beaches of North Carolina in 1954, right? It's part of the history, but it doesn't matter to the story, right? Mm-hmm. So, filtering out and kind of figuring out what actually serves your story is, I think, the hardest part with research.
Yeah. You're talking my wife's language. She works in a library in the archives at KSU. So she's into microfiche and all this other stuff. I'm just like, what are you talking about? Again, too stupid for this kind of thing. But she loves that kind of thing. And it is funny. It reminds me of the story I was reading in a book about research, actually. I think it was Woodrow Wilson. I think got shot before a speech. I think it was Woodrow Wilson. Anyway, one of the old presidents. And he was famously, he got shot. He was like, "Well, I'm going to still give my speech, blah 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 speech." And then he went to the hospital. He was like, "I'm not going to let this shooter get." So this guy that shot him went to a mental hospital for years, and he wrote a note to the doctor, basically saying, I'm very sorry. I'm completely over, you helped me so much. And this person found this note written to this doctor in just somebody's basement. This wasn't in a historical record anywhere. It wasn't in a library. They had to go talk to I don't know it wasn't, maybe it was the doctor's basement or something, but it was just out there. Like you said, there's just stuff out there. You have to go out there and find it, because not everything. We like to think everything's on the internet.
It's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Really not. You have to really go out there and
surface anything on the internet is, and it's great. And it's a great place to start, right? If you want to learn about something, check your sources, right? Yeah. Make sure that they're kind of legitimate. But it's a great place to start. But you're never going to find the really good stuff there. Yeah. The really good stuff. You're going to read a book. You're gonna have to read a book. You're gonna have to go to a library. You have to go talk to people.
Yeah. I like buying books on Amazon, and then they come here, and then I'm just like, all right, well, I did that. There's several I've got downstairs. I'm like, well, I should have read those by now that I ordered for research, but I have not done that yet, but I'll get to it.
If you stack enough of them up, you have a coffee table.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm trying to get into audiobooks a little bit, because, same thing. I'll get a book. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm going to read this, and I'll give myself till this date. And then this date gets here, and I'm like, no one else knows. I'm going to extend the date. It's no big deal. So audiobooks, at least, if I'm driving and I play it, I can't escape it. It's you're not about to endanger other drivers to sit here and flip through things. It's no, you're going to press the button, sit there, pay attention. So audiobooks, I'm trying to get into those a little bit more too. But a physical book I do enjoy, because I need to focus and highlight, and I like to take notes and different things like that. So yeah, it's the balance, but audiobooks, if you're struggling, check audiobooks out. It's great.
Yeah. If you need to get it done, you got to get it done.
Yeah.
And audiobooks, that's totally fine. It used to be a gigantic industry. I remember my uncle and aunt used to drive all over the US, and Cracker Barrel would have a program where you could check out audio tapes. And then you could drive to another Cracker Barrel and turn them in
swap
anywhere.
out that 8-track.
Yeah, basically. And just here's this new book on whatever. And you just drive across to Montana or something, go to Cracker Barrel, all right, we're done. And then I don't think they have that anymore, but I have not checked. I've not done my research on Cracker Barrel enough to know if that's still around, but that used to be a thing. We'll talk a little bit about that you talk about the filtering process of both of you, about finding the story in all this research, filtering out what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes you kind of have to fake it a little bit and like, oh, well, this isn't quite true, but it's going to fit the story more.
Yeah. You definitely have to take dramatic license, right? Like, I mean, because you're telling a story, right? You're not telling a historical account, right?
Yeah.
And that's if we want a historical account, read the biographical books, right? But with film, you're not doing that. And it really has to be, so, I mean, I find on anything that I work on with that, I'm always taking like, oh, this happened to this person, this happened to this person, this happened to this person. It all happens to this person now, right?
Right.
So much crap happened to this one person. It's astounding. Forrest Gump, right? So, but that's, but I mean, you have to be able to take that license because the audience and the reader, the viewer, the whatever, they're there to go on a journey, right? And that's the journey, whether that journey is through a number of characters, right, through an ensemble, or whether it's through a single kind of protagonist, they're there to go on a journey. So you kind of have to take all those things and really, you have to manipulate the facts of it, because it's more about the emotion, right? It's more about where this ebb and flow and where this tide goes, and it's less about what the actual historical data points are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, again, the great part was getting to talk to people because the internet is super oversaturated because that's where we started. And of course, having Jack, since we're pulling some pieces loosely off of his experience or, one or two experiences that he's had, that was helpful as well because it's like I had that source right next to me, and it was great too because there were moments where he would want it to be exactly like this or exactly like that, and I'm like, whoa, like it's not you, it's character you, but not you. Mm-hmm. So like the hardest part for us was finding the balance of the history, the facts, but also trying to it's a narrative story, still trying to make that fit and make that work. So you kind of do have to play with it, like the rules and the symptoms and things that go with the specific mental illnesses we're working with, that stuff doesn't change. It's like that, that's facts. That is what it is. But it's like certain points in history or, because even Jack doesn't fully remember how every single event happened to him. Like he's not going to remember every conversation in full detail. So you kind of pull what you can and be as honest as you can. Like that balance is what we tried to figure out within the script. But we're definitely going to have to, I guess, further on into the process, like it is still a thing where you want to try to explore more of toning things down with your research if you can't always talk to a person. So I agree with you, like, don't just be on your phone, go to the museum, go, to any physical places that you know of that are still around. If there is a person that is, that lived during a certain period, go talk to them. So yeah, I think I like more of the hands-on kind of stuff when it comes to research than it is just being on the internet.
You got a tricky one too, because your subject, is there with you and they're part of this creative process, right? So like the stories that I'm telling, I've either gotten their life right or I've created characters that are not real characters, that are amalgamates of other things, so I can squish them. So they're not really, so I don't necessarily have to get life right, but I don't, so because we all have our positive traits and we all have our negative traits, even me. So, and I think that's got to be tricky for you because, right, for me, I'm writing a thing and I've got the life rights and I can talk about, wow, he's a fantastic dancer or he's really good at this, but he was also kind of shitty to people at times. And he also was not, he was also a drunk and he was, so I can explore the dynamics pretty freely. And I would think with you, it's a little tougher because you've got your subject as part of the creative process. And I'm curious, do you run into issues of like, well, I don't want to be seen that way?
Mm-hmm. On Jack's part, I will say he was super open, which I really, really appreciated because before we even approach the script at all, having that conversation of, okay, well, how much of you do you want to put in this? Because it's a huge deal. You're talking about something people don't really want to talk about. And, his character is the main character of this whole thing. So, and he used the same name. I was like, are you sure you want to keep Jack and Jack? Are you sure? He was like, yeah, I want to keep it. It's great. So we'll see if that affects him later. But for now, I really did appreciate his openness. We do have our arguments. There are moments where I'm like, okay, like this isn't the best trait, but the character's not perfect, just like you're not perfect. None of us are. So there were moments where we did, fight a little bit, going back and forth, being like, okay, no, we got to put this in here. But then at the same time, because sometimes I can be super technical. So he's like, no, like this is in my brain, this makes sense. Or in my brain, this is how it kind of is flowing. So just because it doesn't make sense to you, we're going to put it in the script this way. And then, we'll narratively be able to explain it and go about it. So I think having conversations and really communicating was really just the best way for us to, find some middle ground and, tell things as best as we could. It is definitely tricky, but because our personalities are different, it kind of helped because we kept each other accountable in different ways. So yeah, the process, I think it flowed pretty well. So yeah, I'm just really grateful for his openness.
I definitely understand. The first feature I ever completed writing was about an ex-girlfriend that tried to kill me. And I would show this to people, and I got the feedback I would get was basically like, this is an interesting story. You've got to step back a little bit. Yeah. And I understand this happened to you personally, but you've got to make this interesting for everybody else. Like, this is a great concept, but like, why would I watch this as a movie, versus like your life story? You know what I mean? And that was definitely a hard lesson to learn. Like, well, this is really interesting to me because I almost died.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that's cool, but like, where's the movie in it?
Cool, not cool.
Right. Yeah.
It's a cool, not cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think, Kapil Gandhi told me, he said, we'll have a beer about the real stuff later. Let's talk about the movie version. And I was like, that really hit me. I distinctly remember him saying that. And I was like, I kind of get it. And that was me, like 26-year-old, like, oh, you bastard, don't touch my script, being an asshole. But now I'm like, yeah, he was right. It wasn't like, it was an interesting idea. It needed to be molded a little bit more into a watchable thing.
Yeah.
Which is a little counterintuitive because you do go into, and I remember I heard the same thing, like write what you know.
Right.
And it's like, here, the fact of the matter is that as human beings, we can know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we can know, and if we're open and we're empathetic and we're willing to listen, we can know a lot about other people and we can know a lot about other things, right? So we actually have a great deal of capacity. And I think, so I don't always encourage that advice when I'm working with young writers. I go, write what your heart tells you to write. And for a lot of people, it does come out for me as a writer starting out early on, it was very, very personal. Everything I wrote was very tied to my poor little angsty teenage self, right? And then it kind of expanded out of that. But I think for some other people, they're like, I want to write a sci-fi. I want to write about aliens. Yeah. And I think telling them, no, you got to write what you know, write about your backyard. I mean, what they know is they know fucking aliens, man. Right? Like they look out in their backyard and they see flying saucers coming down. Maybe they really see them. Maybe they don't. Maybe they took too much acid. I don't know. But whatever it is, like, so I think, being true to yourself as a writer and being true to the things that you want to write. Now, again, at the same time, you do need some pushback on like, okay, well, I want you to expand out. I want you to challenge yourself as a writer. And we don't want things to be superficial, but I don't know that writers have to be limited to only write about what they know. I don't know that you can only write about a woman, right? Yeah. I got to have female characters in my scripts too, right?
Yeah.
You got to have male characters in your scripts. I think we have to be open to the idea that as writers, we can be empathetic enough, we can be caring enough, and we can be resonant enough to be able to write beyond what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes back to proper research, making sure you're telling the authentic stories and not just like, well, this person's going to do this because whatever. Like, no, do some research. Yeah. Well, switching gears a little bit, what are you seeing out there, Dan? You're an educator. You're a smart guy. What's take the temperature of?
I'm not in education anymore. I don't.
Well, okay. Well,
it stays with you.
I'm a former educator.
It
right?
stays with you.
It stays with you. It does a little bit. So my current employment is I work with Storyboard Financial Services, where we focus on production accounting and working with companies to help manage their cash flow, figure out what their finance plans are, and then get all the way through production without going bankrupt. Right? Everybody's like, "Oh, you know money people?" I'm like, "I know money people. I don't give it to me." But working with that, and a lot of it, of course, is production accounting and managing that. And so from that perspective, you kind of get to see what a 60,000 picture looks like, what a 60,000 foot view looks like, and kind of what's going on. And, I think Georgia's still going pretty strong, right? I think across the board, most people I hear from are like, it's still slower this year.
Yeah.
It does feel slower this year, everybody.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but it doesn't just feel slower in Georgia. It feels slower.
Yeah.
Period. It feels slower, period. But, I've seen a lot of good projects that are coming out of Georgia. And what's been really fascinating, I think, in the last couple of years is Atlanta and Georgia's always had this, we're this independent streak that's run, but we've really started to see it kind of really develop. And I think, I think I'm seeing more independent films being made. I'm seeing more opportunity for independent filmmakers to make stuff. I'm seeing more people wanting to invest in the Georgia filmmaking scene, and I think all of that's really positive stuff overall. I don't know that 23 is going to be as banner of a year as some of our previous years, but I mean, we did kind of go from $500,000 to $6 billion, right? Real fast.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can gauge it that way. I think you have to look at it from a long-term perspective and continue to invest in those resources, continue to invest in the Atlanta Film Festival, continue to invest in GPP, continue to invest in these organizations, WIFTA, and all
Film Impact
Georgia, right? And the grants that the Film Impact Georgia does, and the messaging and continuing, and you're seeing, talent agencies that are big, starting to set up shop. Now they ain't been calling me yet. They called you yet, Chuck?
No, they have not. But
my phone number is 1-800 hot buns. Not really. Don't call that. But you are seeing vested interest. And I'm seeing finance plans that are being made out of the Georgia area, and people from other areas investing in that. So I think there's a lot of really exciting things that are burgeoning and continuing to grow.
I ask because you're right about the agencies moving here and everything. I just remember back in 2007, reason I met a few people, and I'm pretty sure Charles Judson was there. There was an informal meeting, I guess, group getting together. It was on a message board about is Atlanta a one short town? Basically, are filmmakers making one short and then fizzling out or moving somewhere, or where are the features kind of? This is back in 2007, so this is pre-tax stuff. And I just wonder, is it changing? Would somebody make that post now and be like, I wonder, have we really gotten, sure, Marvel and everything, all the money and everything, that's great.
You can't, that's not you can't gauge Marvel, right?
Yeah, it doesn't count. Yeah.
Atlanta's just it's a place to get a tax credit on your $1 billion movie. Right. Yeah. No offense, please keep coming here. Yeah. And keep hiring all of us, right? Please keep coming here and hiring all of us. But, it's incredibly valuable to have those big things, that have the Disneys, but you have to have a full ecosystem. You also have to have a homegrown component to it, right? So for me, I'm starting to see more and more filmmakers that are setting up shop and doing more than one feature here and doing multiple features. And I, I don't want to necessarily call anybody out because I don't want their phones to start blowing up, but I think you can look around and you can start to see at the film festivals and at some of these places where you start to see filmmakers who have made their second and third feature here out of Georgia. And you're starting to see more and more of that kind of development that's going on here. And it's not all just happening down on the south side of the southwest side of Atlanta. It's happening all around the perimeters, and I'm seeing a lot of people. I mean, doing all kinds of interesting stuff. The Dad's Garage movie, right? Like that, just doing really cool and interesting stuff, and more and more of it. And I think it's an exciting time to be in this market. And I've only been here since 2015, as you know. I came late to the game. I came from North Carolina, where we had some wonderful tax incentives that they decided to get rid of, and everybody went down the toilet.
Right.
Literally overnight, just disappeared. So don't get rid of your tax incentives, y'all. It's going to hurt.
I remember that. I remember a lot of those people came on the show to talk about it. Okay. I was like, hey, welcome to Georgia. Talk about it. I remember that happening. It was nuts. Yeah.
But if you look at the incentive program we have in Georgia, it's not. It is more robust, and it is not as easily removed. It would take a lot more work to remove it. But they're continued to tinker around it, and some of the tinkering is good. And so we do want accountability, right? We don't want people just taking state dollars and running off. We want accountability. But I think because of that, it's put so many people here. You're seeing a lot of talent, a lot of actors moving into the area. And I'm also seeing a lot of writers start to move to the area.
Oh, good.
And I think once we'll know we're here when we have a real writer's room. And I mean a real one, it's a Netflix series and the writers are stationed here. That's when you'll know you've made it. That's not the next step. The next step is to continue making these feature films and to continue to provide opportunities where people want to move here and they want to get here and they want to be part of what Atlanta has, because what Atlanta has is very different from what LA has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got, we actually do have a lot more, we got a little more spice to our voice, I think. Right?
Yeah.
And, and I think that says a lot. And, you wouldn't see all of these colleges investing so heavily into, development of young voices, right? And UGA, Georgia State, Kennesaw State, we're all investing heavily in creating people who can actually creatively lead projects. And so that's not just the crew members. And the trick is going to be just finding that middle ground where people can continue to work and make money, because you're not going to make money on your independent film necessarily straight off the bat.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You're going to make that. And if you break even, you're doing great. And if you're getting it, making a movie is so fucking hard. Getting a movie made is so hard. Right. It's hard to make a short.
Yeah.
A feature is like almost impossible. It's like Sisyphus. It's right. You just keep pushing a rock up a hill.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Forget about making a good movie, right? Just getting them made. And so, but you're seeing a lot. You're seeing just a lot of filmmakers who are making stuff, and it's finding voices and it's finding markets, right? And they're actually finding national distribution, and they're finding places to go. And I think that's a really good welcome sign for where we are in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Sheridan, how about you? You might actually be maybe a more I don't know. You're definitely gonna have a different perspective because you're so young, and like we said, not cynical and dead inside yet. Like what is your perspective on, maybe not as a whole, but just like how do you see Georgia film, the industry? Like, what is your view of everything? And especially right now as you're trying to make this short.
I mean, yeah, I think with the short anyway, like you said, you're not always gonna make the money that you want to make. Like right now, this is my first time ever doing like funding campaigns and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I know of them, everybody talks about them and they're like, "Oh, this is so great, it's so successful." But it's like there's a lot that aren't. So it's like there's that learning process, but even in the industry, learning the ups and downs of, these months are super hot. There's a lot of films going on right now, but there's like 3 to 4 months where it's just like dead. So like good luck if that's all you're doing. You better have a backup plan. So it's that is something that I'm kind of dealing with right now because everybody's talking about the possible strikes that are coming up with the DGA, SAG, Writers Guild.
Up first.
So yeah, all of these things come in and people are like, "Oh, this is scary. We're pushing all this stuff back." So I mean, I am seeing as well, like, there are a few friends that I've made that are like making independent films and, they cry at night and it's insane, but it's like they're trying to get stuff done. They're trying to set up shop here and be independent. I've also know some people who are not having official writers' rooms, but they're trying to band people in Atlanta together to make something and kind of prove yourself. So to me, Atlanta feels like the spot where they may not initially invest in you, like you said, like with the short, but it's like if you make something and then it finds that market and you proved that, okay, like this person, this young person, whoever is serious, then I can see more people trying to come in and be pulled in because they see that, there are people that are starting at a young age that really are serious and really are watching people in LA or because, a lot of people from LA, Europe or whatever, they are coming over here. So if you do get that chance to talk to these people, if you do get that access to ask those questions, it is something that you can retain and then apply as somebody who really is trying to build a base in Atlanta. So I think it is, like you're saying, it's growing, but it'll take some time. Like you got to be patient with it is what I'm seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. One thing I love about Atlanta too, ever since I've gotten here, is I would say is accessibility. And what I mean by that is, when I first got here, I called up the film office out of nowhere. And they're like, "Come on in, let's talk, let's see you. It'd be great to meet you." Like they don't do that in LA. They don't do that in New York. I love New York and I love LA, but they don't do that. And it's accessibility. It's There's Linda Burns. We all gotta love Linda, right? But I came to her out of nowhere and was like, "Hi, I want to meet with you." She's like, "Great, let's meet." Mr. Luce, same thing, right? Like, and people who are in the game, they're doing it. They're accessible to you in this market in a way that I don't think is. And I think for me personally, I try to do the same thing, right? Like I try to make sure that I'm accessible, that if you wanted to find out whatever the hell I got to say for whatever reason, because then, I'm there for it. And I think that Atlanta has an accessibility factor and that has a sense of community that's not necessarily in a lot of the other markets. I think a lot of the other markets are, particularly LA, it's cutthroat, right? It's cutthroat. You hear it all the time. And I think there's a little bit of that competitiveness, but a little competitiveness is good.
Yeah.
There's certainly a dedicated effort in this community to build new filmmakers, to build diverse filmmakers, to build a community that is supportive and where opportunity can arise. Whether or not opportunity will arise, who knows, right? Whether or not it'll arise and you'll even see it, because often it's there and you just don't look at it. You walk right past it, not knowing it was an opportunity. But this community does a really good job of providing opportunity for people to connect, to build, and to find something that they can get into.
Yeah, even elevating, like, I know some people at the top of COVID, they started as like a PA or like like a lower level position. But now, as COVID's gone on, just over like the past 2 years, are now like production supervisors, or they're now like in these spots. So it's faster progression here, definitely way faster than it would be in LA. Because I have some friends from LA as well, and they're like, yeah, I've been an assistant for like X amount of years, and like it still hasn't moved, it still hasn't changed. I'm trying to persuade them, and they're like, yeah, like we'll catch you on the next one, or yeah, we'll get you an opportunity that hasn't happened yet. But with with Atlanta and with COVID happening and all the stuff that came our way, so many people had to learn quickly, for better or worse, depending on who you're talking to. But like having those opportunities to really, have to grow in your space really fast because they are looking at you to take over and, rise up for the next project or for whatever reason, So I think, that's been a really cool thing in addition to accessibility in Atlanta, just like that progression. So that's cool.
I still remember Tom Luce met with me and a co-writer, my friend Ryan, in the middle of like the height of Walking Dead, just like during production, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll come meet with you guys about your little script or whatever you're writing." And just walked in. I was like, "Oh, it's Tom Luce." It was just weird. He's like running one of the biggest shows on the planet, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll come hang out with you guys, just talk about your dumb script." I was like, "Okay." There's Tom Luce. It was just, I don't know. Yeah, it was a little surreal,
And you get right. And again, like, and I see it all the time here in Atlanta in a way where stars, performers, they're at a level that you're not at. Right.
Yeah.
And they don't just look at you and like, where's security? Right. They kind of are like, they're like, hey, it's nice to meet you. We're security. No, but they're actually they'll engage with you, and I think I think a lot of that just has to do with a number of individuals that have been in this community even before I got here, who have really invested deeply in providing a community, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah. You mentioned Kennesaw State, and Mitch Olson's one of the professors over there. And he's been great the past few years while I've been there. That's one of the reasons he came here, because he was like, LA is driving me insane. This community is better because of those reasons. He said specifically the college programs all like are working together to lift each other up and like, let's get film going here. He's like, LA, UCLA and USC, they hate each other. They're not going to work together on anything. But all these colleges here, they're just like this one, lift one boat, whatever that saying is. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's definitely the Southern hospitality, whatever, which,
Well, and I think also, again, there's just the space for it too, right? I think I think it's just there's the space for it that has allowed it, and we've had a number of leaders across the state, state leadership that has seen the value in it, even if they don't necessarily see the value in the rest of my voting opinion. They see the value in the business aspect of it, and we can't forget that it is a business ultimately. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they really recognize it's a business, and it can be a pretty fruitful business, and it can be a place where people work, and they make a decent salary. They can make a decent salary. They can have health insurance. They can have all these things in this industry that is really it can be a win-win for regardless of where you are on a political spectrum. The business aspect of it can be very beneficial for everyone.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Sheridan, you're the first one I've had on one of these new ones that I've never met before.
Cool.
It's all been old friends up until now, and I felt like this went pretty well. Everybody got along. I'm still waiting on one of these where everybody's just like, "Oh man, I don't like any of these people," and we all hate each other and throwing things the whole time. Maybe that'll be more interesting. I don't know. We'll see.
You'll have to videotape that one.
Yes.
If they start throwing stuff or things go crazy, you got to catch that on video.
Yeah. Instead of Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Podcasters of Atlanta.
Atlanta Film Chat, the Jerry Springer edition.
Before we go, let everyone know where to find information about you, websites and social media profiles, phone numbers, addresses, social security numbers, whatever.
Blood type.
Yeah.
All of that sort of stuff. Please tell us.
So for me, again, Sheridan Randolph, I am working on a short film called 12 a.m. And if we do decide to expand it to the series, Day Night is what we're calling it as an expansion. Why Day Nights? Why 12 a.m.? I guess I'll give a quick little rundown, but it's just because, your moods, you have bright moments and dark moments, and sometimes you don't know which one you're going to lean into. So that's the 12 a.m. You're right in that middle section. So the same thing with calling it Day Night. So as a result, all of our social media is Day Night _series. So you can find us on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and it's, Day Night as far as the actual time of day. So DAYNIGHT _SERIES. So yeah, find us, follow us. That Indiegogo campaign is around 12 a.m. You can find it. If you care to donate, we're down. There's also a Cash App. Same thing, Day Night series. So, we're anybody who wants to support some independent filmmakers talk about positive representation of mental health for people of color. we're here. Here we are.
You know how I know you're young is that you said TikTok first. That was the first thing. It was like, we're on TikTok and all these old people things.
hey, Instagram. Hey, you can't. Instagram's great too. TikTok, Instagram, and I don't dog Facebook. I have a lot of good older friends who are on Facebook. It's great.
God.
A lot of good older
I
friends.
did I say older? Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It
just slipped out. Oh my God.
I didn't hear that. I have to turn on my hearing aid.
Oh, I'm used to it. My son's always like, Facebook is for old people. Nobody's on Facebook. I'm like, oh God. Yeah. Unbelievable.
But he will be when he wants to stay in touch with his friends from high school and college eventually.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Honestly, that is where I found them first.
Zuckerberg's coming for you.
Yeah.
It's going to get you one day.
Dan, where can we find you?
Indiegogo, right?
Yes.
All right. Good stuff. Right. So for my day job, check out Storyboard Financial Services. We are a branch of Element CPAs. And I will say, if you work in this industry and you've ever tried to do your own taxes, you might want to think about coming to see us, because there's nothing that sucks more than trying to file 12 W-4s and 20 1099s and get your kit rental written off. So, feel free to reach out to the CPA division. But I'm over at Storyboard Financial Services, where we focus on the film production and accounting services. And then by night, you can find me at danarkelly.com. So.
Yeah, if I still was doing sponsors. Element sponsored this show for a long time.
Yeah,
very, very cool, nice people over there for sure.
Yeah, it really has been going there. Again, I come from a production background, not from an accounting background, and obviously, having produced films, I understand how important the money is, and how to help manage that. But that's what that was the skill set that I brought into it. But it really is like a family over there. Like they are by far the kindest people I've ever worked with. So it's
nice.
I tremendously enjoyed being there, and all of our clients enjoy coming and visiting too, because we have dogs and usually there's beer in the fridge. So.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, if you are like me and you heard 1099 form and almost started crying, please go. Yes, go see him. Please do it. It's great.
Yeah, it's not fun, but I really appreciate y'all coming on today. It was a lot of fun. But so yeah, thanks and good luck with your film and everything else you got going on.
I'm glad you're back, man.
Yeah. This was like awesome. This is my first time doing an Atlanta podcast. So this is the greatest thing ever. I've done a lot of radio stuff, but yeah, no, I'm telling a bunch of people to watch your show. Like, you're for sure. Like, this is great. This is awesome.
Thanks for listening to Atlanta Film Chat. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. The show is produced by Tranquil Aggression Productions and Zombie Cat Productions. Your host is Chuck Thomas. Editing is by Joshua Goldkey. The soundtrack is by Michael Breezy Keys Jones. I am your humble announcer, Rob Scheimer. Remember, you are your own biggest fan. So go out, make your projects, and don't let anyone stop you.